even remember how I danced.
Oh yeah, no, that's not a good thing. They'll never think you do the same. Periscope is live.
Right on.
Is LinkedIn live there, boss?
YouTube is live. LinkedIn
YouTube
hasn't
is live.
come through yet, but it should come right. Yeah. And
Oh, this is professional
And here
show
we go.
business.
In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Real Hospitality Live. I am so thrilled to get to hang out with my friend Matthew Corlett today. Matthew is the owner of Sunwapta Falls Rocky Mountain Resort in Jasper Park in Canada. Matthew is a guy who has taken what he's learned through the industry and is out sharing it with other people. Is such a positive influence for not only people in the resort industry, but for people in the hospitality industry in general. We had a pre-call yesterday where we just couldn't get off the call. We were just going to keep on going.
Yeah, fantastic, man. It was awesome. I loved it.
So good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing really well. And I just want to thank you and Robbie. Like, I'm super excited to be here. This is awesome. And, I have a long appreciation of you guys and how, you really have like such a wonderful commitment to serve, and, how you put things together and connect the dots is really awesome. So when Robbie reached out, I was like, oh yes, for sure. Yeah, let's do it. That's awesome. That's great. So I'm excited.
It's always great to get a call from her.
That's a good thing. Yeah,
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you guys? I mean, of course, we know what the world is like right now. We don't want to get into the negativity, but I mean, you're a guy who's kind of ahead of the curve usually on stuff, and watching how things are going. I mean, you brought Sunwapta into like reservation systems before anybody else was doing it in the area, and brought onto Expedia and all this other stuff. And so what are you doing to keep yourself busy while we're waiting for the world to turn back on?
Well, that's a really incredible question. So I see the question kind of in two ways. Like, I see there's the business side, right? And then there's like, how do you make decisions? What's going on? With what is happening, how do you make decisions about what do you do next, right? And then also there's just the reality that we're all dealing with. Like, you're at home, you got 4 kids, I've got a couple of kids. They're rambunctious, they need attention. They have ideas, and sometimes our ideas conflict, right? So, and then there's like there's a kind of slowdown in a lot of activity that makes you become more introspective again. And I'm going to just say this early on. I'm actually really thankful for that aspect, because it's allowed me to start like maybe digging a little deeper into like who I am and what matters for me, and not only for me, but for like the team that I work with at Sunwapta. It's been in my family for 40 years, so there's like a long history there. The staff that we have on payroll still, what's it like for them? So I'm on a business level, we're just looking for key data points, right? Like, we have borders closed, and so what do we do if borders are closed? We have social distancing. So what does that look like for the gift store or the restaurant aspect of our business? For a lot of people out there, wouldn't know about us because we're a small independent hotel and restaurant and gift store with no brand recognition, right? So just in brief, it's a tourism destination. We're on the Icefields Parkway. It's people are going there to connect with nature. Not only that, but to have those experiences they're going to carry with them for the rest of their days. Right. And they're going to they're looking to have these incredible bucket list vacation experiences. Lots of our guests don't come back, right?
Right.
So that's why they're coming to the Rockies, right? They're to create that. So in a changed world, what does it look like? And like in terms of mindset, when you start thinking of all the obstacles preventing you from, and you start going down that rabbit hole, and you're like, oh, we're gonna have to do this and this and this and this. It kind of hit a point where you're like, oh wait, if the world is still in such a state that all these measures are required, that we have like glass screens in the gift shop and only 3 people at a time are allowed in there. We have lineups for the bathroom and everything's automated. I don't think we have to worry about that because I don't think there'll be a lot of people going, right? So it's an ebb and flow on the business side, right? Um, the one thing that I think that I'm doing a lot of these days is being careful with my thinking. So can I share like just a little, just an example, just a little
Oh
story?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So I woke up. This is probably 2 weeks ago. We're already kind of in lockdown. We're staying in the house. Normally, I get exercise every day. So I wake up before everyone else, and I go work out in our living room. I do some yoga or lift some weights or do something, right? So I woke up and because my alarm went off, all my alerts on my phone came up, and I took some time and I read some news headlines. And sure enough, like 25 minutes had passed. And I'm not saying it's not good to know like where things are at, what's happening, but actually I can't control any of it.
Yeah.
I'm told I have no control over that. And so what happens as a result? You start creating this story where it's like, I have no control. Oh my God. Like, I don't want to say victim mentality. It's not really the right way to phrase it, I think. But, you just start feeling helpless and kind of depressed. And there I was like 20 minutes in, and I'm like, oh, it's 6:20. I could have been doing yoga for 20 minutes
Yeah.
and like just feeling just really in my body and making my mindset clearer and taking some time to focus on nourishing myself, because at some point all of this is going to change, and maybe the post COVID world looks significantly different. All that future telling, I can't tell, right? I really don't know. But one thing I do know is what I do have control over is what I feed my brain, how I'm thinking about things, how I'm treating my body, how I'm working with my kids and my wife at home, those tense moments, those things I have some control over. So um, when all of this settles, whatever that looks like, I guess the question I'm asking myself is, what condition do I want to be in?
Yeah.
Do I want to be ready? Do I want to feel inspired? Do I want to feel, refreshed and ready to charge into it and take advantage of whatever opportunities are there? And I don't mean that in a competitive set. Like, I'm not like against my competitors, but I mean that as being there to serve.
Yeah.
There's people that want to come to the Rockies. I want to be ready for that. There's people that want to come and shop again. I want our store to be ready for that. It's safe. It's set up right. Staff, the people that we have hired are like, they're so awesome. They're such awesome people. I look at them just like I look at guests. I want to serve those people. I right now, and it's, you got to be careful, right? Because I'd love to say to them, hey guys, know what? We're going to do this. We're going to do it no matter what. Screw this whole thing. But no, that's BS. And it comes from like, you and I talked yesterday at such great length, and we have such a similarity in this way. Like, just actually the truth. What do you know, and how are you feeling about it?
Yeah.
Like, emotion is so powerful, and that's why the staff we have, they're so flexible. They're so I don't want to say forgiving, because maybe a lot of people out there are like, whatever, you should tell your staff whatever the hell's going on, and that's the law. But actually, I look at it so different. I feel like I owe them, because they're honoring me and my family and our company, and by applying for a job. When they apply it, it's sort of different, right? Like, just to paraphrase that, like at Sunwapta, there's no part-time jobs. You move to Sunwapta, we're in the middle of Jasper National Park. There's no cell phone reception. You live in a youth hostel. I live out there when I'm there, right?
You and the Bears.
Yeah, that's it. The bears and the waterfalls and the glaciers and just the air. The other thing that a lot of people don't talk about, I don't know if we have a picture on our website, but the night sky at Sunwapta. Now it's light out late, so when you like if you're up late and maybe it's May or October and you drive down to the falls and you turn your headlights off, there's almost zero light pollution. And there's just like the fire in the sky, just the Milky Way, just like so spectacular, really awesome. And I think that one of the wonderful things about coming to the Rockies or anywhere where there's natural beauty, I think there's a perspective change too. Like the like life itself is so vast. it's way, way vaster than we think. It's so huge. There's so much abundance, and when I don't know about everyone else, but when I'm there and I'm looking up at those stars, I just feel like it's one of those surreal moments, a sublime moment where you're just like, oh, you have such a different perspective on all your problems or fixations or things you're thinking about.
A long time ago, I worked out in that area and spent a summer out there, and I know exactly what you mean about the. I had to literally pull the car over and stop and catch my breath because I felt so small as a being.
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
you don't feel that way in a city or in a town or on the highway, but just along the park highway between Louise and going up towards the ice fields. There's just such vast mountains and vast space, and I literally had to pull the car over and get out and go, whoa. It was almost an agoraphobia moment where you're just nothing is tangible and it's so freaking huge that it just wow. And that was burned into my mind 25 plus years ago, and I'm still emotional about that moment.
Yeah.
It's something else about going out there. It's anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to go and you're watching, this is something you need to get on your list of things to do.
Yes.
Before you go.
I agree 100%. The one thing that I often say to guests when I have interaction with guests, I'm a big fan of the author Peter Drucker. I love his books on business, and he describes something, and I can't remember which one it is. It might be The Effective Executive or something like that. And he describes how usually when you start taking on more responsibility and you're entering, like, say, a C level of responsibility, you're drawn into the inside of the business more, where you're focusing on problem centers and cost centers.
Right.
And I certainly noticed that with me. All of a sudden, instead of being on the front lines, I love the front desk. I mean, I have like instantly I feel joy. It's so fun. And I'm not saying the front desk of every hotel is the same, but because we're in this bucket list destination, because people are there to create stories and memories, and they want to meet you, they want to hear what you have to say. And even in the world of the age of information, most people that check into our hotel do not know how much there is to do and see in Jasper, and they certainly do not know how to organize their day.
Yeah.
You consider like for example, I found often Europeans, they'd be like, oh, well, I can drive in 7 countries in one day in Europe. Well, in Canada, you can drive for 10 hours and not see anything. You can just see nature. So it's not reasonable to wake up in Banff, do the Banff gondola, stop at Lake Louise, do the ice fields, do whitewater rafting, do the tramway, and then do Moline Lake. That doesn't happen. That's like 4 or 5 days of sightseeing right there.
Yeah.
But I often say to people, I'm like, sometimes instead of worrying about I got to stay in Banff, I got to stay in Jasper, I got to do these activities, is how about do less, and you might actually experience more, like where you, like, often I'll be driving on the parkway or I'll be out for a bike ride, and something just catches me, and I just stop and I'll walk out to the river edge, and you just see things in a whole new light. And it's those experiences that stick with you. Like, sure, I remember doing the ice fields. I'm not saying, these activities are bad. I think they're all great. And actually, there's one in particular I absolutely love, is the Moline Lake boat cruise. It's so, that place is just, there's something special there. There's an energy there.
For sure.
The hair on the back of my neck right now is sticking up just at the thought of being out on that boat, on that lake. I love it. But it's there's a lot to do and see, and sometimes, like you, it's just better just to just take moments instead, and really appreciate it.
It's fun that you say that about getting back on the front desk, because I'm that way oftentimes. If I'll go in and do a consulting, or if I'm working with franchisees or whatever that is, whether I go and I'm dealing with guests or I just jump on the line. For me, it's like when I was a younger man, I was a cyclist, and it's like getting on the bike again in the spring.
Yeah.
You're like, oh. now I remember how much I love this.
Yeah.
And I don't have the knees or the back to do it all day long, but I'm sure going to enjoy it right now.
Yeah, yeah, or the
If I'm
bump.
being honest.
Yeah, these days it's rides with the kids, and I like that pace. So, it's a different pace. Um, I want to backtrack just a little bit because I mean, I think there's
Here's the fun
certainly.
thing, Matt.
Oh
Here's
yeah,
the fun
go
thing.
ahead.
It's our show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Oh, look at that.
This is not structured.
Sprockets.
With no commercial breaks. Anybody who's watching, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, please do.
Tommy's moderating, and she'll let us know if there's a question on. We're on Periscope, we're on LinkedIn, we're on
Oh,
YouTube,
cool.
and
You
we're
guys
on
got this dialed in. That's so great. So
it's
awesome.
I love doing it, and it's fun for everybody to kind of jump in and to be able to ask these questions. And I'm sorry to cut you off, brother.
No, awesome,
Go right ahead.
awesome. I just feel like maybe I skipped over the question about like, how are we as a business, or how am I kind of dealing with this? But I guess the real answer there is there's a lot we don't know,
Right.
and it's good to know what you don't know. So we delayed our opening, and we told like all the wonderful people we've hired to date, and we have people on payroll that are year round. They're all still working. We're in a position where we can do that, so that's a wonderful thing, right? One thing I love about small business, and uh, I'll share a little side story later, but it's so interesting. There's all these people, all these little characters, all these people with ideas, with something that drove them to do the business. And even if it was like, I just want to make money, there was something else beneath that. And that starts to become more important as time goes on, right? And you have these businesses that hire people, and those people are spending money on things, and the business is paying taxes, and we're paying payroll taxes, and we're contributing to the economy, and it's really I have a lot of pride in that. And I think my dad, and obviously all the help he's had over the years, I'm so proud of him for that aspect. Really, really awesome. So um the in terms of what we're doing, there's a lot we just don't know, right? So we're also thinking about how, like, the questions I keep on asking myself is, in a world like this, how are we still trying to serve people? How are we honoring the people that did have reservations for us and had to cancel? How
Right.
are we honoring the people that want to make reservations for us, or with us, but can't because we're opening a little late?
Right.
How are we honoring the person? Like, we have this couple for years. They stay with us the very first day we're open, and they stay with us the very last day we are open. And that's really cool, and they really enjoy it. And like, we're a 2.5 star by amenities hotel, right? So there's no phones in the rooms, there's no pool, there's no gym. But again, when you're coming to the Rockies, you don't spend a lot of time in your room. The
Right.
room has to be nice and comfortable, but it's not like you're there to languish in a 1,000 square foot room with marble floors, right?
Right.
And you don't need a pool because you're there to experience nature. Some people do need a pool, and that's great. Don't stay with us. We want you to enjoy your time, and
That's
not be like all bummed out about your trip to Jasper because we didn't have a pool. So the question I keep on asking is like, how can I serve? How can we serve? What can we do to serve them and make sure that they feel honored and appreciated for the decision they made to book with us in advance? So of course, we're doing what a lot of other hotels are doing for people that we've had to cancel or have had to cancel. We give them like an honorary booking link so that they can rebook at a discount and get like breakfast with their stay, just as a sign of like, thank you so much for choosing us. We're going to be here ready to go when the world is ready to go, right? And then and trying to keep in communication in whatever way we can, right? So that it's not difficult, it's not hard. Also, one thing I noticed, like, we have a policy at the time of booking, people give a deposit,
Yeah.
right? One night stay. And that in large was to protect us against what was happening with online travel agents like Booking and Expedia, with invalid credit cards. So that gives us a chance to right away contact people and say, hey, we couldn't process your card. Please provide a different one, or we're going to have to cancel the booking. So that's fully refundable if they cancel at least 3 days in advance of their scheduled time of stay, right?
Yeah.
So we're not issuing people Sinwapta dollars. We're not issuing people a coupon to stay in the next 2 years.
Right.
You know, we're honoring exactly what we said because that is so vital. You know, like I'm kind of reminded of a story I heard recently from an entrepreneur who said that he had this issue with someone who had purchased like a brand he had owned and they were still using his name and they sunk the company, but his name was still associated with it and no one realized that it was like you know, kind of a white label kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he stepped back in and they didn't have the cash to, you know, refund people. And if that's the situation with the company, I think what he did is exemplary. He reached out to them and said, you know what? We're out of cash. If we refund you all right now, we're going to go bankrupt and you won't get it. I want to honor our deal. What can we do to do that? And he phoned those people. He did. You know, it wasn't like he had a call center, you know, reach out. And by doing that, people were like, oh, they were so surprised. They were really grateful. They were super happy. And the word he used it for it is, he's like, look, if you don't have the resources, then be resourceful.
Right.
You know, and what resonates with that being resourceful, like you could hire a lawyer, you know, you could hire a team of lawyers. You could, I mean, you could do different things. You could bully people. You know, you and I as business people have experienced this before, where companies bullying you. You know, you're like, what the heck is going on here? You know, because we work in the service industry. It's like,
Right.
can you imagine going to a table and being like, here's your steak. And they're like, I ordered salad. Oh no, you ordered the steak. You know, when you walked into this room, you signed a contract
Right. It
that
is in
you
there.
get an $85, you know, steak and a $300 bottle of wine. You know, like
Right.
it's crazy. It's crazy. So anyway, the thing I liked about what he had done is it really came from the heart. It was really transparent. He was really vulnerable and truthful, and showed his commitment to honor their deal. And there was an education component. They had to find out, you know, he wasn't the one in charge, and that's why things went sideways.
Right.
But what a wonderful thing to do, you know. So in terms of what are we doing? Well, we're honoring our commitments. What are we doing? We're looking at what's open to us to help us honor our commitments if we can't. And right now we can't. What are we doing about opening? We don't know. You know, we don't
How
know.
could you?
But again, so what's everyone on the team doing? Well, we have weekly meetings. We talk about stuff.
Right.
We look at what we can do. You know, again, for me, so much of it is like, what do you control? What do you control in life, right? It's like, do you control other people? Do you control things? Like, I think the best use of willpower is actually to exert it on your own self. You can control, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm a Buddhist and I can be like in a stage of enlightenment, be like, I don't need that thought is gone. My brain's a maniac, and it sometimes it's really mean to everybody but me first, always me first. So
Right.
I'm selfish that way.
Hey, if you don't, you have to look after you so you can look after others.
That's it, right?
I want to touch on something that you mentioned just before we get away from it. In that,
Yeah.
something that I've always done and always teach in restaurants is that the more informed your guest is, the less pissy they get, regardless of whether or not
Absolutely.
a table of 25 sat down before them and their order's gone into the kitchen, or if something broke down, or if you know, 3 of your staff got the flu this weekend and you're trying to catch up and whatever. If you contact or even just go to the table and you let people know, hey, this is what we're doing. We're dealing with it. We're all humans. Life happens to the living. And this is what we're doing. And if you stay in contact in that way, communicate in an honest way with your customers, then they're almost always crazy forgiving. about, whatever it is. And if it's going to be a little longer, hey, can I get you, this, or, is there anything that we can do? Is there any other information we can do? Or can we help to help plan something else for you, in the interim? All of these things, as long as people get informed as to what's going on, and they're like, hey, listen, I'm not sitting here wondering what's going on. I now see, I'm now educated. I can make decisions with some of this information about how I'm going to feel about it. And most of the time, I'm going to say 97% of the time, people are like, okay, yeah, I get it. Thanks so much for coming up and being forthright.
Super appreciative. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I look at some of the mistakes that we made even last year, in terms of events that happened, it's always that where we failed. It's where we didn't actually either take the time or see the necessity to share something that really would have been a game changer for those people's experiences. And here's the thing too. If something bad happens in business and you have a complaint, right? Yeah. I remember, sorry, I'm just remembering one of the first complaints that I had where the person was irate. I think I audibly farted. I was so nervous, I was just like, ah. True confessions. This is real hospitality live.
That's right. This is real hospitality.
It is not fake. I didn't blame anybody else. But there certainly is a propensity.
And if anybody's watching outside of the country, you have to understand that's part of Canadian humor, by the way. It's
yes.
If anybody who's watched South Park, that's all part of it.
Yeah, I like South Park. That's a good similarity. But for me, complaints now I really enjoy complaints. It's an awesome opportunity because a few different things could be happening. One could be that the person's actually having a problem that's unrelated to your product, but they've chosen you to let some of this aggression out. I got to tell this one story because it was epic. I was working on the front desk. I'm out at Sinwapta. It's busy, right? And this guy comes in. He's huge, physically big. He's he's a weightlifter. He's something, and he's fit. He's 6'4", probably 250 pounds, right? He comes in. He's like, "You guys, this is okay." I'm gonna frame it a little more historically because it's not modern times, right? But it was an ancient history. But it was probably around 2009 or something, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, so the world of online booking was still different than it is now. Now everyone books online, no one calls. But in those days, it was me and 5 people on the desk in the morning just to handle phone calls. It was just constantly ringing, ringing, ringing. So he comes in, he's like, "You guys are liars." And I'm like, whoa. And he's like, and there's people checking in. So there's about 6 or 7 other guests at the front desk area. He's just barged right in. He's pointing at me. "You guys lie about pictures on there. The room's tiny. It's not as big as it is in the picture. Blah, blah, blah." And he's yelling. And, I can't remember exactly what I said. I'm like, "First of all, I'm so sorry. Whatever's happened, that's on me. Can we go talk about it? I want to make this right for you." And he's like, he was expecting a fight.
Right.
So he came in there to do war.
Yeah.
So we go into this office, and this office where we handle complaints, it's not on purpose, but it's actually kind of dilapidated, So I think maybe people walk into the office with us and they're like, "Oh my God, these poor guys," It's not a strategy. And actually we painted it now. It looks much better. It has new carpet. There's no wires hanging from the walls anymore.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so we sit down and I'm like, "So tell me what's going on. What can you explain what you mean by pictures?" He's like, "Well, the pictures on your website, they make the room look huge." And I'm like, "You know what? You're right. I've always hated that about those pictures. Hotel photography is hard because the photograph, you want to capture everything in the room, but you can't do that with a regular 35 mil. But you know what I'm going to do just for you and anybody else like you? I'm going to take candid pictures with my own camera. I'm not a photographer. And I'm going to make a gallery on Facebook, a gallery in TripAdvisor, and a gallery on our website of candid photos. So people can get because most people just want to see the room and get the idea.
Right.
But I'm like you, actually. It bugs me too. I hate doing the photos like that for the rooms, but we kind of have to. And he's like, oh, I totally get that. I get that. And I'm like, tell me a little bit about why you're here. He's like, oh, I'm here with my wife. And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to be rude, but like, I feel like there's something else you're not telling me. I feel like maybe your wife's really upset. You're angry at us because we've let you down. And he's like, well, she is really upset. And then I'm like, great. Now I guarantee you I'm going to solve those problems. So let's figure out what's going on there. He's like, I don't think you can solve the problem. And I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, we had our honeymoon at a place that looks like yours. So I booked your place online, but actually that's not where we honeymooned. And I was like, oh. So he's like, we're at the wrong hotel. I booked here because I forgot the name of the place. And I'm like, oh man, okay, well, let's try and figure out the name of the place quick. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, if they have rooms, whoever it is, we're just gonna rebook you. I'll give you your money back. You're out of here. He's like, what? And I'm like, look, you're here on basically your anniversary. And you've been married a year? He's like, yeah, we had our honeymoon last year. And I'm like, we got to get you to that hotel. And he's like, you're going to do that for me? I'm like, absolutely, for sure. I'm like, okay, was it Becker's? He's like, oh my God, that's it. It's a competitor, right?
Right.
They're closer to the town of Jasper. They have some small cabins, but they have some big cabins with like full kitchens, and they're family owned and operated too. They're a great outfit, great restaurant. And they're right on this river. And he's like, yeah, that's the one. It was Becker's. I remember the name now. As soon as you said it, clicked. So I got on the phone, we got them a room, and off he goes. So was he really mad about the pictures on the website?
Right.
Hell no. I don't even know why maybe he thought, well, at least I can get dinner out of this or something. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But so there's those kinds of complaints where if you're defensive and you want to argue, or you're like, we don't lie about our pictures. We're not lying. You and I talked about Grant Cardone yesterday a little bit. And this was before I studied any of his sales training. But it's like he says in sales, he's like, you can't have a sale unless there's some agreement. Like if you start with agreement in a complaint situation where you're like, well, wow, tell me about that. And you repeat like the key part of it. So the pictures seem misleading to you, and then you can get confirmation and really look at it and be like for me, I did agree. That was genuine. I hate those pictures. Like I was there when we hired the people to do it. And I'm like, don't stage the room. Don't stage it. Don't put flowers there. There's never flowers there. And they're like, well, we want to make it look nice. And I'm like, yeah, but if there's no flowers there normally, and we have pictures with flowers, we're setting up the pre-arrival expectations for the actual product. Right. So for me, like you were saying, like one of the biggest things is information. And one of the biggest things for me that I noticed after dealing with complaints, not that we had like thousands, but we had enough, right? That most of the time where there was a legitimate complaint, there was a disparity, a disconnect between their pre-arrival expectations and the actual product. Right. And for me, that's why TripAdvisor was gold. I loved TripAdvisor. It's not that I don't anymore, but now TripAdvisor has such a massive information, like holy Christ, you got thousands and thousands of reviews. Not that it's not important, it is very important. But in the early days, it was different.
Stuff up too, right? People could put their own images up and whatnot. I think I think that it's really cool about the under promising too. Like, don't dress it up any more than we dress it any other day. I have a client who we haven't had on yet, and I'm looking forward to it. He's got a tablet based menu, which you can go on, and you can, while you're sitting at the table, you can go on and you can press, for example, you want the lamb shank, and you can see a picture of it and what it comes on the plate and the whole thing. And the cool thing about doing that is you can take a picture of your product, and it comes with you know, it's this big a portion. This is what it all comes with, rather than doing it in I would say McDonald's professional photography where a hamburger
Right.
is this big.
Yeah.
You can at least give a real description and a
Representation.
real
Yeah.
a real thing that you can look at. And
Mhm.
the thing about the pictures, as soon as you said that, I was like, yes, all the times you look at travel photography and you know how gorgeous this is all set up, and how there's nobody ever anyone else around, you know, when it looks so serene. It's a big difference when there's two busloads of tourists around the place, and those pictures aren't up on the website usually either. When there's
Mhm.
700 people around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you actually, that reminded me of something else we did that was really fun one year. I kind of like, I'm not a massive risk taker, but sometimes I get an idea and I just can't let it go.
Right.
So one year I decided to hire a marketing assistant because I had some ideas I wanted to kind of get some legs under. And like we have these like kind of itineraries that are self-drive itineraries. They're free online on our website that give people, each itinerary is like one full day of sightseeing.
Okay.
And like our front desk is like sort of like a very proactive concierge service at the same time. So when someone checks in, we go over some of their, if they're not exhausted and just want to go to the room, we go over some of the things to see and do. We have very easy to understand map because Jasper, you got one Icefields Parkway, you got a little loop, you got the Edith Cavell Road, you got Moline Lake, and that's basically it.
Right.
So it's a nice, easy visual way of people understanding it, and you can be like, here's one day of sightseeing. This. You're going to stop here. You're going to do this. We're going to give you tickets for that if you want, and all this kind of stuff. So I thought, well, we should do videos of this. But there's so much professional videography out there of the Rocky Mountains. This was
Right.
2012. And all of them are like, I have a good friend who might be watching today. I don't know if Craig Farlinger's there, but Craig's an entrepreneur, a really awesome guy. And him and this other gentleman named Bob were responsible for all those videos, DVDs of like Victoria to the Rockies or Banff to Jasper or the Icefields Parkway.
Right.
And they're professional, right? Beautiful imagery, like zoomed out, big widescreen stuff, professional narration, nothing shaky. And I'm like, all that stuff's really good, but I want something that we can actually connect with our viewer with. So I want an anchor. I want someone in the middle that's like, hey, my name is, and I'm going to show you something cool today. Just that kind of enthusiasm, right? And I hired this girl named Heidi. She was just fantastic, and she did all these videos. They were hysterical. She's like, "Hey, it's Sinwapta Heidi," and today I'm going for a hike to the bluff across the road. There's this great 15-minute hike, gives you like these killer views
Right.
of not only Sinwapta because we're tiny, really tiny, right?
Right.
But like the Catacomb Mountains across the way, the Athabasca Valley. It's just absolutely staggering, and it's not a hard hike. So she had like this whistle. She's like, I'm terrified of bears. Who's not, right? And she's
Right.
like, I'm using my bear whistle to scare them off. Later on, we found out from the wardens that that whistle makes a sound of a dying marmot or a marmot in distress, which is it would actually attract bears. But
Take them off the shelf at the gift shop.
Oh, it was we're doing this interview with two wardens, and I wish we could have put that one online because it was fantastic, but Parks is very particular. So but they're like, yeah, we saw that Sinwapta Heidi video, the hike to the bluff. Yeah, about that whistle, and she just looked at me and hit me like, I'm like, I didn't say take a whistle. Anyway, we put together these wacky series of videos with Sinwapta Heidi and a bloopers reel, and she interviewed the front desk and the gift store and the restaurant, and we put it together and made like a Sinwapta channel and put it in the rooms. And people were coming to the desk asking every day if they could buy it.
Right.
Where can I buy that video? I want to buy that video, because it was so endearing. There's footage of like bug splatter on a screen, and I think it wasn't even on a phone. It was just because I don't think the phones really were adequate like that or being used quite yet like that.
Right.
Yeah, what a blast that was. Yeah.
I had
Oh,
my sister and her late husband, God rest his soul, he was the funniest man I ever knew. They went paddle boating
oh yeah.
in Jasper one day, and there was several people out paddle boating, and a moose came out into the
Oh
water
wow.
and started chasing paddle boaters.
Oh my God. Yeah, they're
And they're paddling for
they're angry
all
animals.
their worth to get back to shore and get back up to the get out of the way. And and you want to get back to nature, you paddle boat away from a moose.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, moose can be quite aggressive animals. There's no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, you don't want to be in their way in the water or on land in any way.
Yeah, no,
That's
not at
funny.
all.
So I mean, you're doing some a marketing company as well, which
Yeah.
you're taking your knowledge and experience and all of the stuff from working with your property,
Hmm.
and really sharing that as a consultant now too, right?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Like, over the years, I've worked with different marketing companies, and we had this discussion yesterday, and Robbie really appreciated this too. We all have this kind of shared experience where you're working with a marketing company. I'm not saying this about all marketing companies because I know marketers out there that aren't like this, but you kind of get like locked into these kind of weird relationships where you lose control over your messaging, but you know your client, and the marketing company doesn't know your client.
Right.
And then they're insisting on applying what's worked for them in the past to your marketing.
Right.
And even though you might have experience otherwise, and you give them your advice, you give them your input, and they refuse to listen, and you end up with these really weird results, right? Or no results. And I was saying how we worked with companies that used to distribute us over the GDS and do our website. They had a recurring contract. It renewed every 5 years. Like, you got to be diligent about remembering when that contract's going to auto renew without review.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the last one wasn't so bad, but at the end of it, I had this I think he was the CEO or the president of the company on the phone with me. We're not a big account. Like, to put things in perspective, we've got 52 rooms. We have a gift store. We have a restaurant. We're open 6 months of the year, right? So it's not like we're like a, one floor, one arm of any Las Vegas hotel has more than 50 rooms, and then there's 30 floors. So, it's not like we're a huge account. But at the end of the conversation, I was pointing out how they'd failed to measure data. They'd failed to be able to prove to me that what they were doing was working. And actually, it was an abysmal failure. And I had, I think there's this thing that happens too, is like equivocation. Like, either something worked or it did not work,
Right.
right? And if it didn't work, it doesn't mean necessarily like, oh, I failed and this is a failure and this is crap. But at least you should say it didn't work. What didn't we understand?
Yeah.
Where did it fail?
What did we
What did
learn?
we miss out on? What did we learn? And I love this idea. There's a entrepreneur out there. His name's David Mills. I don't think very many people know about him. He's has an outfit that basically teaches search engine optimization, digital marketing, and stuff. And I've done some courses with him. It's really powerful stuff. Very, very good. And he said, uh, um, the if you look at it, if you make understanding your goal, then you either understand or you win. You know what I mean? Instead of being like, well, I failed, and then you just give up, throw everything in the garbage, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't want to understand. They wanted to insist how wrong I was. They wanted to insist how it was my fault,
Right.
and all this kind of stuff. I found it very frustrating. So I decided I'd take some of the things I had learned. I had a great experience implementing a chat bot on our website. That kind of came out of kind of something else I wanted to talk about. Actually, was just what does service mean, and how does that work? But it came out of an idea I had that, you know back in the day, people called, we'd convert 8 out of 10 callers.
Right.
When someone walked in, similar, 9 out of 10 people would stay. And, how did that happen? Well, it happened with a great engagement. But when someone visits your website, it's different. Like I love this description of a website. Like someone's like, oh, hey, I really want to know more about your hotel, let's say. And you're like, great, here's a complex website with 1,000 links to things you might not care about.
Right.
And you've got to dig around and try and find what you care about where it is, because our site looks different than every other site in the area. So
Right.
good luck and see you later. So that, like, if you think about how different, how could it be, how can a website be proactive and engaging people? How can it meet them where they're at? How can it decide what their state is? What are they looking for? So I thought the only way to do this is to be able to have a way that people can have conversations, so they don't have to dig around, that they can engage with you. And like I think the use of our chat bot is low overall for the total traffic to our site, but
Right.
spectacular results, like really powerful results. And we've also integrated it thanks to a chatbot company that I worked with. And if anyone's interested, I'll happily share his details. But we strategized, and we built out this very powerful service bot, and also one that can alert humans if it gets to a point where it can't be resolved,
Right.
so that people feel cared for, right? So I thought, well, what if I took some of this knowledge, some of the Facebook advertising I know, because I've run a lot of Facebook ads, and there's tactics, and then there's what's under the tactic. It's sort of like, okay, you might have a sales protocol, and you ask these questions, but why? Why do you ask those questions? Why are
Right.
those important? Not important to you, but why are they important to your client? What does your client care about? So what started off as just a few conversations with people about doing marketing, and they're like, oh, I'm interested. And like I said to you yesterday, I don't want to put it out there that I'm a digital marketer. I think that's a misnomer. And, I'm not interested in having people be like, oh, hey, look, I need help with, although I'm guarantee I could help, like pretty much no problem. But I don't want to work with a sport check, right?
Right.
But what I found right away is how, to go back to that Peter Drucker comment, when you're operating a business, because all the people I'm working with are small, right? But they're busy, and they have a lot of success, and their focus sometimes has to be on the inside, on the cost and the problem centers, and they're losing touch with the outside, which is actually where your business succeeds or fails. It's the consumer that decides whether you win or lose, not your P&L statement.
It's-
So
Yeah, I want to just add something for a second.
yeah.
100 years ago, I worked with a hotel general manager who I had this conversation with him, and he's very successful. And he said, I always look at our property and the way that we do things from the customer's perspective. And I was like, oh yeah, well, of course you do. And he goes, no, I go into rooms after cleaners have been in there, and I sit on the toilet and I look around the room. He says, because that's exactly what my guests are going to do.
Right.
He says, I judge whether or not the place was cleaned properly, and whether or not the customer is going to go away with a positive experience on this one act.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, number one, that's really smart. And number two, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he was a GM of a fairly big property, and he would go and do this. And I thought, you know what, that's really putting it into the customer's perspective. And when you're talking about the website, when somebody's coming to your website, you think they want to know all of this stuff. And you think, well, it's going back to everybody's my customer, right? I'm going to put all this information out for everybody. Yeah. But if you were to get on the other side of that front desk and come around, these are not the questions that you're asking.
No.
Right?
Not at all. Yeah. It like I love this kind of description of marketing too. Like, how do you get into the conversation that the person's having in their mind?
Yeah.
You know, like why are they there? What's their state? You know, what are they looking for? How can you find out? And then how can you genuinely serve that purpose, right? Like, so um, if we're like if we're on a phone call and someone's looking to book a room, and we ask the right kind of yeah, we ask the right kind of questions, and we discover that, well, they're coming with like 8 people and they really want to cook in their room. They're have very special dietary needs and they're mega athletes or whatever. Well, we're not a great pick. So what do we do? Oh, we're not good for you. We don't have cooking. You can eat in the restaurant, you know? Or do we say, hey, I'm gonna just give me a second. I'm gonna give you a list of places. Do you have a pen and paper? You want to give me your email? I can email it to you. Right. So we're gonna make recommendations that would suit them better for their party.
Right.
And say this is because, and we don't have this. So I want to make sure you have a great time, blah, blah, blah. I've
Right.
done phone calls like that where people stay with us anyway,
Right.
you know,
It's a lot
because
better
they're
to do
like
that
the
than have 8
service.
pissed off people.
Yeah. And also they were appreciative of the service,
For
right?
sure.
Like that was a big thing. So it kind of reminds me of I was mentioning yesterday, I used to be a telemarketer. I was in Australia, and I think this is kind of interesting too. Like, you hear in marketing sometimes, like or sales theory, that, or even website design, you don't want to look so different that you're unrecognizable,
Right.
right? Because then people don't even know what the hell they're looking at. Like, if you went to go to the Fairmont's page one day and all of a sudden all you saw was like a big black screen with a thing in the middle that was a heart beating, would you click it? Like, you'd be like, what the hell, am I on Fairmont or not? Right? Like, you'd want to figure it out. But being in a foreign country with a Yank accent actually was enough of a difference that people would pause, right?
Yes.
Um, but what I learned in that experience is, um, whoever asks the questions and initiates those questions actually kind of controls the direction of the conversation. So the way we look at doing walk-ins or phone calls, and walk-ins are less part of our business now, because as online booking became, not in it's not really just online booking, it's online everything. I mean,
Right.
you know, I'm gonna I buy product all the time for our business on Amazon because it's
Right.
faster and cheaper than buying like directly from suppliers in the area. I don't mean like food, but sometimes plumbing parts, sometimes mechanical parts, all these kinds of things. So just the familiarity, that you trust this. Because in the
Right.
beginning it was like, oh, where am I? You
Yeah.
know, and so all that's changed, and we're usually like 85% pre-booked by April, for the summer. Last 3 years of absolute boom time in tourism.
Terrible problem to have.
Yeah, terrible, awful problem.
You know what I
But
thought was really cool? Actually, our conversation yesterday
yeah,
about the um, cycling company, about the
oh yeah,
booking earlier in the year. I
yeah,
think that's awesome, and that's all proactive, right? I mean, this is, and for everybody who's watching, I mean, we're talking about all kinds of different stuff, but I mean, I wanted to get the opportunity to get all of Matthew's great ideas out there today.
I hope I can remember some of them. I'm
But
gonna
I
take
mean,
them good.
as a kind of a cap on the end of our marketing conversation. I mean, that I think that was a really good conversation that we had about the cycling organization wanting just to have their stuff booked earlier in the year so that they could plan and whatnot, right?
Yeah,
And
interesting. Yeah,
just not even necessarily about bringing more people in, but servicing them in a better way.
sure. Yes, yeah, totally. Like, just to kind of explain that a little fuller for
Mhm.
people out there. So a company that we deal with in the hotel, he's like, oh, you're doing marketing. He's like, oh, I really need some help. I need some help. I'm like, oh, cool, cool. Let's set up a time to chat. So we had a chat, and I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, what's your goal? And he's like, oh, that's a good question. And he took some time to think about it. And he got back to me, and he's like, I'm different than most other businesses in that I don't want to grow my business. And I'm like, cool. So why are you talking to me? Right? Like, you know, if you don't want to grow it, what's wrong? And then he's like, well, you know, I just want to book my 100 seats a year. And I'm like, great. So how did you do last couple of years? Oh, I sold them all. I'm like, well, again, you know, so what are you looking to accomplish? What's your goal? And he's like, it's a good question. So actually, I just want them earlier so that I'm not so stressed out later. And now here's an interesting thing, like that he's, you know, organizing, selling the last seats while he's trying to run tours because he's an owner operator like we are, right? So I appreciate that. And I really get it. So now we have a problem to solve, right? Now we can determine if marketing is the avenue to solve that problem. And if it is marketing, then, and maybe it's not the marketing, maybe it's the sales part, right? So maybe it's getting the conversion quicker, incentivize people to book before that time. Having a way where you can follow up with people that have been interested in the product. You and I talked about this yesterday, and I think I'm just going to say it out loud because when you said it and I said it, I was like, wow, it's powerful. I think there's an opportunity to just get follow up as a single product and help companies with follow up. I know how like lazy we are as a company with follow up because we've had so many great years, right?
Right.
When it's not required, you get kind of lazy. But when I look at it, I'm like, wow, follow-ups are really important, not only with your unsold, but with your sold, you know, and then with the people that have departed, because they have information that you need.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing we've done fairly well is to get feedback, consistently get feedback, try and understand it.
I'll tell you, that's my experience in telling people about that too. And I mean, it really hit home for me when Grant Cardone was on and we were talking about that, about following up with your guests. And I took that information and I used it as part of a restaurant server training workshop, which really was for operators, not for servers. And part of it, I said to them, and this is about servicing who you already have coming in, right? It's not about going and getting more. It's about being better at what you do, and getting more information. And I had for example, in Victoria, I had 130 people sitting there, and I told them, you know what, this was Grant's advice was take 20 minutes, call 5 people from your who came in last night or who ordered from you last night. You have the information, whether or not they ordered from a third-party delivery or whether or not they came into your dining room or they called and made a reservation. You've got their phone number, you've got the email, whatever that is. Just take the opportunity to do that. And I will say that there was probably 75 to 80% of the lights went on in the room. You could see all the light bulbs go bing, bing, bing. So obvious. And then there were people who went, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do that. And I thought, there's a percentage of the industry that constantly doesn't do well. And that average, it does this. And part of that reason is that people aren't willing to engage in the customers. They're not willing to just do better. They're not willing to, do something as simple as getting that information from the customers, or just put yourself out there in a different way and engage them in a way where you can either solve a problem or thank people. Right. I mean, that whole follow-up thing is huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah. And I don't know if anyone out there has ever thought of doing Grant Cardone sales training and they're kind of sitting on the fence. One other thing, like for me, right, that I do constantly is I love to learn. And it's not so much analysis paralysis or anything like that. I love learning new ideas and hearing new perspectives. Because for me, in a way, thinking is actually being able to compare perspectives, where you can kind of look at different angles of the same thing so many different ways. Sorry, 4 thoughts just popped into my head. But on the Cardone thing, I'm like that. And sometimes we don't have 4 hours. So
in full disclosure, we take no money from Grant whatsoever.
No. And there's other training.
Grant's assistant. who sometimes is on. Hi.
Yeah, hi. But the cool thing that I took out, I was sharing yesterday how I just finished the follow-up component, like all the things he has on follow-up in Cardone. I purchased like a deal 6 years ago, something like that, and it was like $1,200 lifetime access, the best investment ever. Like seriously, it's paid itself over and over and over again. So I think right now it's 67 US a month, which is like $100,000 Canadian a month. So maybe,
Right.
maybe wait. But in the follow-up, I'd always thought in my head, oh, follow-up is always about trying to make a sale every time you call.
Yeah.
But no, it isn't. And despite his, like, some people I know judge Cardone, his charisma, his, like, go get a man kind of obnoxious kind of element, which I actually find really intoxicating. It's so different from me, right? And I get sucked up in that energy, man. I love it. I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And why not? Like, why not feel elevated and energized, and then look at what you have to do?
Yeah.
There's this idea of like, I love this. I want to try and paraphrase it correctly, but am I in the right state right now to produce the results I'm looking to produce?
Right.
So if I'm in a state of deplorable misery where I'm convinced people are against me, the world's against me, and I mean that can be a beneficial mind point or a state of mind to have, right? If you're a fighter and you need that feeling, maybe, but or that the world sucks or that I suck. And as I said before, I always do it to me first. I'm selfish that way, right? Then am I in the right state to produce the result I want to produce? And I think Cardone the training for me has been a lot about that. Like, he's like, look, you're not phoning this person or texting them or sending a video message to sell them. You're just making contact. And whenever you can, you're gathering information. Why?
Right.
Because you want to understand your client.
Yeah.
And that if you don't understand your client, if you are so busy making them understand you, right? I'm not saying don't not inform them, but if you're always about, like, even in a negotiation, you got to understand my point of view, you got to understand my point of view, and you don't listen to anything, then what's going to happen? So I really appreciate that. I think it's for those who might judge him in that way. I'd encourage you to see past maybe that persona, and actually there's so much valuable in his training, so much value in his training.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, we're big fans here, and
Yeah.
Grant's been really good to us and coming on. We're at the end of our time, my dear friend. And this has been a great time. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, and I hope that we're able to turn the generators on and get the lights on and get the kitchen up and humming up at Sunwapta.
Inevitably, and now with you guys so close, we're gonna have to have you up.
Oh, absolutely. It's completely on our list, and it was on our list for this summer too until all hell broke loose.
There we go.
It's for us, it's a day drive to get up to see you up there anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. My guest today has been Matthew Corlett of Sunwapta Falls in Jasper Park. Matthew's, again, so generous with his time and his experience and his knowledge, and is a true person who's a servant to the industry, true hospitality, my friend. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Jason. And thank you, Robbie and Real Hospitality Live. It was a blast. Loved it.
Robbie waves and says hi.
Okay, great.
Take care.
Okay, take care, guys.